Hey guys, welcome back to more AFK Arena. In today's video, I'm going to be doing an early game tier list updated. I have done one of these before, but been playing through two accounts through the early game. I feel like I got a good feel on it. Take everything with a grain of salt. I haven't experienced everything at an equal level, but I just want to give you guys my thoughts on how I think the early game tier list is. Now, keep in mind, this is early game. I consider anything from the start of the game up until you have a full team of 240. So some things like Wukong is going to be like probably A or S tier up until level 100, then they're going to fall off. Also for Celestials and Hypogeans, I'm going to treat them as only having an elite copy. Then damage dealers, I'll treat them as, you know, being your main carry, leveled above the rest of your team. And then all other units, supports, tanks and stuff like that, I'll play them like they can be higher ascended, but they're not going to be at the same level as your carry, so they're going to be lower level. Just the disclaimers at the start. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, and don't just skip to the end, see the results and go, that sucks. If you want, go back and look at the hero and see what I have to say about them. So we'll kick it off with the Celestial Hypogeans. Like I said, considering that from 0 to 240, these guys will be at elite only because most people aren't going to have them at mythic, ascended, and all that stuff. So Athalia, she's going to get into a C tier for me. She can be used to lock out an enemy, but once again, at elite, she's not going to be too effective. Twins, we're talking, this is talking campaign and tower, not bosses. Twins, S for bosses, even at elite. I'm going to put them D for everything else. You can sometimes get their link to work and help out in campaign. Flora is an F, you're just not really going to use her. Orthros is an F as well. Like, you can use him to block someone's energy. Like, if you have an enemy Lucius as the tank who's ulting too quick, you can put him there and slow down the energy generation, but not the best. Taylene is an A even at elite. Just fantastic sub into so many teams. Wukong, like I said, first 100 levels, he's probably like A or S tier, but then he does fall down to about D tier after that. So you get the free copy. Everyone can use him as their carry for the first 100 levels. Because like I said, really, really strong. As soon as he goes into his clones, it's pretty much GG for a lot of the battle. But, you know, for the rest of it, he drops off, and that's why I'm going to put him down here. But first 100 levels, he's up here. Aziz, F tier, just too squishy, can't really make him work. He can sometimes be use him in the back row to mind control the furthest enemy. It sometimes works, but not that great. Khazad, he's just going to sit in F tier. Mahira's going to sit in A tier. Fantastic elite copy. If you pull her in like the first 4 chapters, she's going to skyrocket your progression. Put your carry in front, she's going to whip them, give them more haste. It's just more energy. Then she's got the full charm. Really, really nice. Mezoth, I'm going to put C tier. Actually, a pretty thick tank. Even like once you get to like 180, 200, an elite copy of Mezoth can actually still be really tanky in the right team. Zorath, not going to get any use out of him. Who else we got? Lucretia. I used her like similar to Wukong. She can be really good in those first 100 levels, but then elite copy just doesn't become enough. But hell, if you spend a little bit and you stargaze her early and get her ascended, watch out. She's amazing for that. And then Zafrael. Zafrael, like, you can kind of use him to get his cloud to get the stuns, but he's just going to lunge into the enemy side of the field and die instantly. So he goes down there. Is there anyone else that I missed from Cell Hypos? Ulna for me gets a B rating because of that fact that she has the invulnerability. I still think Taylene and Mahira are better in the early game, but she can be really, really clutch, kind of like Brutus in some stages. And then we have Mortis. Mortis, I just don't find I can make him work. I had him once in an early game count. I couldn't make him work. Definitely still useful for bosses, but for campaign and stuff, if you can make a team work where he buffs, he might creep up here. But for me, I'm just going to leave him down there. Moving on from that, let's get into Belinda. Belinda C tier, in my opinion. She's not like as a main carry. She's not tanky or sustaining enough to be. She doesn't have dodge, she doesn't have heals, she's got nothing. So if you're making her your main carry, you're putting her in the front row, she's very, very susceptible to damage. And if you're putting her in the back row, then you've got to try and have 2 tanks, which doesn't normally work out. So I'm going to put her down there in C tier. Really good one to put in your wish list though, so you get a free 3 copies fairly early on in the game, and then if you summon one more, it gives you a mythic that you can link to an Ainz or something like that. Cecilia, I'm going to put Cecilia in D tier. As a carry, I don't think she's really that viable, but as like a sub unit, you can actually throw her in and use her ring to really weaken something like a Savius, and she can actually sometimes counter a Savius, so not too bad. Estrella to D, sometimes you can use her for buffs, not too bad. Forks is a C. Forks has really fallen off in my opinion. He used to be great. There's just so much power creep and different things coming into the game. His banish is still nice. His cleanse is still nice for enemy Brutus and stuff like that. But I just don't find him to have enough in his kit for the early game anymore. Gwyneth is a D. Now, keep in mind, once she gets the lightning arrows that stun, which is like level 201 or 221, she gets a lot better. But besides that, in the early game, up until then, she's pretty average because she's a main damage dealer, kind of like Belinda, but you can't put her in the front row to pseudo tank, and she's not really bringing enough control. So once she gets to that 221 or 201, can't remember which one it is, she becomes fantastic, but until then, not too great. Hendrik just like can sometimes be clutch for protecting your allies, but just not quite there in my opinion. Lucius is, in my opinion, in the early game up until full 240, the best tank in the game. I just think because when we're looking at early game, you've got, say, your main carry is going to be at level 200. He's going to be sitting at 180 or something like that. He is still tanky enough at 180, the way he drops his shield, to actually survive in the front row and then also support his whole team with heals. Like the amount of sustain he brings is like better than an elite Talene will do because of his shield's healing and his normal heal and the defense buff. But then he also takes up that tank position. He's just absolutely amazing in early game. He really falls off in late game, so keep that in mind. He becomes like an D or an F tier in end game. But in the early game, he is still a fantastic tank. And I don't mind the investment into him in the early game, and then you can just link him to a dimensional in the late game. Oscar F probably can work. You know, he's one of those ones, like a lot of the carries, you know, you can make them work, but if he was D or F, it doesn't really matter. We'll just put him there. Rain, the support isn't good enough for me for campaign and tower to make her anything but F. Rigby, as much as I want him to be S tier, he's going to sit there in F. Rosaline, depending on your carry, can be really good. Getting that extra ult can be really nice. Plus, she can deal some nice damage. She can get herself immune. You can start her in the front row. She can take one hit, run back, and then start sweeping and then be immune to damage and spread the damage. She's actually really not too bad. Next up, Rowan. Now, I'm going to be a bit controversial on Rowan here and put him in A. I know most people always think Rowan is S tier. In my opinion, playing through a couple accounts now, I find Silas to be a much better healer than Rowan, especially pre-140. I think it's 141 when Rowan starts refreshing his potions. Also, when he does get to Mythic Rowan becomes better, especially with signature item investment. But I feel like Rowan, because you're normally going to invest signature item into your main carry first, the best you're going to have Rowan is 10, maybe 20 on his signature item, mostly 10 in the early game. So he's not even going to bring too much there. But definitely before Mythic, he's not that fantastic. And pre-141, he's really only got 3 potions that heal, and that's about it. And he's normally really squishy, and he's going to be dead before then. Now, Rowan is still fantastic. I'm just putting him in A tier, not S tier, to distinguish that I do think Silas is a better healer in the early game. Keep in mind, still amazing. If you pull him, most people are going to have him in his team. In your team, he is in one of my core teams, and then he's the one that I can sub out for different supports if I need it, because Silas healing is actually just fantastic. But Rowan, A tier. Hope I explained that well enough. He's definitely godly in the late game. Once your full team is 240 and he's ascended, and you can put him in that front row, and he can tank as well as be that support, and he can start stunning back row enemies and stuff like that, he becomes so much better. But in the early game, I think he's an A tier. Thane, F tier. Don't argue with me, Thane people. Anarchy, we're just gonna go Fs. There's gonna be a few Fs. And Tundra, I'm gonna put in D. She used to actually be like a B tier carry for the early game. And then they buffed her, like they changed her, which buffed her in the late game, but took away a bunch of her healing that she had. Like she used to get increased healing amounts and all that sort of stuff. She still has her leg sweep, which heals a bit, but her healing isn't quite where it used to be. So I'm going to put her in D. Next up, we have Brutus. I'm going to put Brutus in C tier. Now, this isn't in all situations, he's the best. I'm putting him in C tier because I like Ulna more than Brutus for serving the same role, because Ulna can give your team a faction advantage. However, Brutus still comes into play if you don't have Ulna, and also some battles, Ulna gets killed before she can proc her immunity. So Brutus can be still very, very clutch in some situations. And so I'm just going to put him there. Just the fact that he can be immune to damage and buy yourself some time for some team comps is really, really important. Drez, I haven't really used him. He could go, and a lot of these carries that I'm putting in F, you could probably put him in D depending on, you know, who you are. I'm just going to put him down there. K-Source, we're going to put him in F. Totem Dude, I'm putting him in C. Really, really strong in the early game. Something that gets underrated is his haste buff. In the early game, when you have a main carry that's doing all the damage, basically, being able to buff that unit further with haste can be really strong. Also, he has the totems that are distracting and some nice healing, so not too bad. Sophia D, she's not really a good carry, but if you're using an Eiron carry, she can be very, very strong in obviously buffing his damage and also reducing the damage of the enemies with her pyramid. Also, that little stun's not bad, and if she does get an ult, even at low ascension, low levels, she can deal some nice damage. So Trana, I'm putting a D. She's not a bad carry, just not the best. I think she's just better than the ones I've put here. Screg, I kind of want to put D. Like, he can be really annoying as a tank, but this is only if you get the copies of him to like have him at a decent ascension for where you're at. So at Elite, he's not going to be great, but if you have him like Legendary Plus, moving into Mythic, he can actually be a decent tank because of his passive makes him get a fair bit of damage mitigation. Also, he has the knockdowns, the knock up. He's got the little Screg that runs through and it's like has some CC, so he's not bad for tanking and a bit of control. Chicken is nothing until he's ascended and has his furniture. Titus, he's a C tier carry. He's actually not a bad carry, especially once he gets his leech life or his life leech on one of his skill ups. He becomes really strong. Verk, we can throw him down there alongside Warwick. Then we have Eiron. Eiron is an A tier carry, in my opinion. One of the best, just not the best. Turtle, I want to put in D just because sometimes you can shell shock, but I think I'm going to just drop him in F. Kaz, we're going to drop in F as well. Lawson. Now, Lawson, I'm going to put in D tier. He's not like the best support, but you can really clutch some situations by using his link, and that is the main thing you're going to use him for. Leica goes up to an A tier support, definitely. Nomura, I'm going to put it C. Not as vital in the early game. You know, she gets really good with her furniture and stuff like that, where she can instant charm. Just good all round, but not the most vital one you need. Soros, I'm going to put it A tier. The reason he's in A tier, I think he's a bit worse than Eiron. Actually, I feel like he's a bit worse than Eiron, but with his, we're going to put him down here. The reason is I want to say that I think Eiron's a better carry. Soros, once you get 30 signature item, yes, but that's very towards the end of the early game if you do. Up until then, he can be used. And the thing I like about using Soros as a carry if you get the copies is because he's obviously going to increase your boss damage as well. Keeping in mind, though, you can just mercenary him for the bosses. So not the most vital, but still a decent carry nonetheless, and just an all-round good investment unit. Solus, I'm going to put in D. I feel like she's a better carry than some of these other ones. But once again, she suffers from the Belinda problem where she's can't really tank. She does have the Dref as well, which ain't too bad. But, we're going to slap her there. Belinda gets extra points because you do get the free copies of her, so she's more viable to get higher ascended. Tassie, A tier support. Baden, just no. Damon, an S tier carry, just an amazing carry. That damage scaling, the shielding, and he just keeps getting better the more ascensions, the more signature item, the more furniture. Obviously, furniture is more endgame, but just becomes better and better. Pharrell, I'm going to put in B tier purely because he needs skill ups to start ramping his abilities. Like, Pharrell is very limited by his skill ups with the amount of targets he fears, the interruptions, the energy. I can't remember, but a lot of his effects come from his skill ups. So it takes a while to become really relevant in the early game. Grizzle, we're slapping down the bottom. Isabella. Now, with the Isabella buffs, I want to say she's like up there on Belinda's tier. She steals energy as well, and she just shreds things. So I'm going to put her in C, but take that one with a big grain of salt because I actually haven't tested her since then. I feel like she's going to be a bit better than Solus, and sort of similar to where Belinda's carrying capacity is. Isolde, I think he's S tier. I cannot choose between Damon and Isolde. I think different situations, different ones are better. The thing with Isolde is you compare him with Odin, and then Odin teams, because he's stacking, I feel like Odin teams actually work a little bit better with Isolde because he's also stunning and has that CC aspect that Damon doesn't have. So not only does Isolde carry, but he also has that CC. And then on top of that, once you get into Mythic and start unlocking his signature item, and if you can get him Ascended and 3 furniture, watch out. But I know that's more towards the end of the early game. But even from chapter 1, he's an amazing, amazing carry. So much self-sustain as well. Just amazing. Kelthor, we're going to slap down there. Sometimes you can use Kelthor to increase the damage on the target you're trying to hit, put him front row or something like that, but all around, not too great. Nara, I'm putting in B tier. Really clutch in some situations. I love throwing a Nara in just to lock something out. Really, really strong. Even though she's not normally going to kill them if you have her at low ascension and stuff like that, just the control is good enough to warrant that position. Shamira. Now, Shamira's a funny one. She's still an okay carry, but I really want to just put her in F tier because I wouldn't recommend anyone going for Shamira unless you just get the copies. I just don't. Okay, so I'm putting Shamira in F tier, and I know this is controversial because if you have her ascended, she's still a decent carry, but I'm putting her down there because I don't think it's worth having her on the wish list. I feel like you're gimping yourself too much by having her on the wish list. And it's just not worth it. There's too many good Graveborns in the game now where she doesn't warrant a spot on the wish list. You shouldn't really be buying her from the Labyrinth store anymore either. And even though you do get a free copy of her through one of the Peaks of Time and a free copy through the Candy Crush event, I just think she shouldn't be on the wish list. That's pretty much the reason she's down there. If you choose to use her, she's decent. She's probably a bit better than Belinda and Isabella, so she'd go into that A tier. But I'm putting her down here just so that people that glance at this don't go, okay, I've heard all this stuff about Shamira, I'm going to do Shamira. I'm just putting this down here so that, because I know there'll be a lot of people just glance at this, and I don't want to encourage people to go the Shamira when I don't think it's actually the best option. However, if you want to go her, she's still good. Odin. S tier. Honestly, in my opinion, better than Leica and Tassie in the early game. The amount of control this guy offers. When you look at Tassie, she gets 1 banish, and then she's going to have to ult to get the sleep on the whole team. Odin, after 2 of his portals, he's stacking all the enemies on top of each other and stunning them every time he does that passively. Plus, he's resetting the energy on enemies. So something like a Verdan in the enemy team, and you keep resetting that and then stacking them and stunning them. And then, like I said, you throw that with an Isolde, and this is where I think Isolde's better than Stitchy in this kind of comp. And Isolde's going to stun, and you end up with this just endless CC chain that is just hard to break. If you have like a Rowan in there as well, he can throw in the stuns. There's just so much to offer. Honestly, I think he's the best support in the game. Early game, that is a bit of a biased opinion, but I just couldn't imagine doing a progression push without an Odin. So he gets an S tier from me. Thorin, I'm going to put him in D tier because he can pseudo tank a bit. But yeah, just not the greatest. Torn, I'm going to put down in the F tier. Tree, I'm going to put in the F tier. And our F tier is really stacking out, but wait, let's actually, one sec. There we go. I'll scroll through it at the end for you guys because F tier is going to be pretty full. Arthur, if you do pick up an Arthur, even though you won't have him like maxed out and stuff with his signature item and all that, he's still just really chunky. I'm going to put him into B tier. But keep in mind, the further you get him, the better he's going to be. But a lot of people won't get him until, later in the early game. So he's going to sit there. Obviously, he becomes amazing, but I feel like B tier is a fitting spot for him in the early game. Ezio, I'm going to put here. This is if you want to use the dimensional linky thingy to go ahead and get Ezio. He's going to go into C tier as like a carry. Nakaruru, I'm going to put her into F tier as a carry. I don't think she's a viable carry. And I wouldn't be doing the dimensional exchanges on anything unless you want to use them as a carry this early on. It'd be better to go ahead and get Arthur. So she's not even worth it. Ukiyo, not worth it in my opinion, because of the investment you have to do to get them. We're not going to worry. Like Arden, D tier early game. Like he can be nice. It takes him until between level 141 and like 180. He's probably like an A tier. But before 141, he doesn't have 3 roots. And like you know, he can be used. He can be used. I'm just going to put him there. Let's put him there. Because even at rooting 2 enemies, he can be very, very useful. But once again, he does obviously fall off because of Ascension tier. Not going to bother with the rest of these units down here. Okay, who else do we have to actually look? I don't think Savius and Muriel, I know there's some people that still say Savius, Muriel as carries. I just don't think they're viable anymore. I just don't think it happens. You get things ascended, you get way too many summons in the game to even think about having to use them as a carry. Cirrus goes down into F tier. Creepy Hand Lady goes F tier. Ainz. Now, Ainz, I'm going to put him in S tier. I've just unlocked him on my other account and using him. I just think Ainz goes S tier because the most valuable thing about him is that you can get him. I got him on day 3 of my account, and it doesn't matter what hero you got copies of. For instance, Belinda, you know, you get those free copies. You get one for clearing chapter to 10. You get one for 7-day login. All you got to do is summon one. Then you have a hero that if you get the fodder, you can make to mythic. And Ainz is just a reliable unit that you can have at the highest possible ascension all the time. He deals massive damage. Mythic is where you really want to have him because you at least want to have his signature item unlocked. 10 would be optimal so you can get 2 ults out of him easily, but honestly, I'm going to be continuing to test him. He may fall off. He may not be as good as Damon and Isolde, but I just think the valuability in him that anyone can get him because you can hire him from a friend for the month and he can instantly get to the highest ascension. I just think, and just raw on his carry ability, you know, you can throw him in the front row with a bit of support. He's tanky enough to get to an ult, and then he's just going to shred people. He's got that passive where after 24 seconds of battle, he's going to half their HP and stun them. Ainz is just an absolute beast. And I know some people say, nah, he's only A tier. I got my Ainz, so I had an Isolde carry who was only at Elite because I didn't pull the copies. I pulled an Ainz, got him to Legendary Plus because I linked him to my Tassie, and it instantly got me through another like 10 stages, and I can probably push further. But I just think Ainz definitely a top tier unit, even in the early game. Albedo, I'm going to put down here because I don't think you're really going to pick up Albedo in the early game. Some people might do the double exchange. I don't know how that's going to pan out. If it becomes viable to actually exchange for 2 of them, which I don't think it would because I would prefer to be renting my Ainz every month and then working on Arthur at the same time. Because in early game, I don't think you need the Albedo. Albedo requires a signature item and you're not going to have that. So I just think Albedo sits down there in F for early game. Next up, we have Pippa. So Pippa, I'm going to put in a B tier. I think she's really good. I don't think she's quite as strong as Odin. And that's a big call because Pippa essentially does the same thing with the teleports, the stuns, all that good stuff. She also has the Acorn. But I just think there's a lot more Graveborn synergy. Like, obviously, we do have Tassie and Lycan, so I'm not even going to say that. But I just think Odin is a bit better. And I think Tassie's more reliable. You got to consider that she does mess up a fair bit in the early game, especially until she gets furniture and signature item. And I just prefer, honestly, I prefer Odin's reset, his ultimate, as opposed to this ultimate. Even if you get the sleep or the heal, I just find the reset so valuable. Even if they're at lower energy, he gets it to use it more often. And I just find him to be more valuable than Pippa. But Pippa still pretty good. Silas, S tier. Honestly, best healer early game. Rowan becomes better in my opinion in the late game, but in the early game, Silas is just, his gas clouds heal so much and they're there so long, and then you get that invincibility with an injection. You can manual play him, get so much use out of him. Absolutely fantastic. Now Joker. I'm actually going to say A tier. I think he's really strong in the early game, and this is untested, so take this with a massive grain of salt. But I honestly think Joker would be a great carry, a great option alongside Ainz. Once again, he gets that benefit of being your highest ascension and all that good stuff, especially in a CC heavy team. He's going to deal some nice damage, but I just prefer Ainz, and that's why I'm going to put him down there in the B tier. Queen, I honestly think Queen could work as a pseudo carry. I'm going to put her in D tier. I don't recommend it. And obviously, oh yeah, by the way, these 2 are not available from the exchange yet. This would be once they're available from the exchange, because they're going to have a time limit before they actually implement them into that exchange. But once they are available, I'm going to say that. Like I said, untested, but just theory, just in case someone's watching this in the future for those two. Who else do we have? Kren. I'm going to put Kren in D tier. Because I feel like he could be an okay carry, because when he ults, he just shreds everything. I just think he's a little bit better than the carries down here. Obviously, Shamira's going to be better. That's a bit biased, actually. Let's put him in D tier. I don't think he's going to be the greatest, and I don't want to have too much bias in that. I just love the character. Respin, once again, sits down there. And then we have Eluard. Now, Eluard, I'm going to put him in B tier. I just don't think he's quite as great as Tassie and Leica and Rowan as supports, or Mahira. But I think he's definitely a fantastic support, so he is going to claim that spot there. Like I said, the rest of these heroes down here, I just don't think we need to actually give them a rank. I think a lot of the legendary tier heroes are just, you know, not like, you're not going to build them as carries anymore. There's too many things. You can get Ainz on the day 3 and he's instantly at your max ascension, and he's going to be better than these guys anyway. So that is going to be the tier list for early game. Let me know what you guys think. Have a debate down there. Once again, just my opinions on the looks of things. I know some people would rate Rowan higher, something like Iron higher as well, maybe Aioli lower, but let me know what you guys think. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.